There's a city in Arizona that probably shouldn't be one of the capitals of artificial intelligence. Phoenix, a desert city, growing too fast, sitting in one of the driest regions in North America, pulling water from a river that's been under pressure for decades, drilling deeper into aquifers that keep dropping lower every year. And right now, in the middle of all that, some of the most powerful technology companies on Earth are building enormous facilities that need to stay cold every second of every day, using water. A lot of it. And weirdly, almost nobody talks about those two things together. We've spent the last few years treating the AI race like it's purely a technology story. Chips, compute, export bans, NVIDIA, Taiwan. Whoever controls the next generation of semiconductors supposedly controls the future. And sure, that's part of it. But underneath that entire conversation is something much older, much more physical. Because the AI race isn't just about chips, it's about water, the kind civilizations fight over. Once you look at the physical side of AI, the whole thing starts feeling different. People talk about artificial intelligence like it's weightless, like it exists somewhere in the cloud, floating around in servers nobody can see. But AI is extremely physical. Every prompt, every image, every generated video, every chatbot response, somewhere a machine is heating up. Thousands of specialized chips running simultaneously inside buildings the size of aircraft hangars, constantly generating heat, constantly needing to cool down. And heat becomes a problem very quickly at that scale. So the industry does what industries usually do when machines get too hot. It uses water. A single large data center can burn through millions of gallons of water per day. Millions. Enough to support small towns. Which becomes slightly unsettling once you actually sit with it. Because these facilities don't produce cars, or food, or medicine.
Mostly, they produce computation. Tokens, predictions, AI outputs, and the demand is exploding. Google's water usage jumped sharply as it expanded AI operations. Microsoft's water consumption surged too. Meta's numbers started moving in the same direction. And these are just the numbers companies choose to publish. There isn't really a universal system tracking this globally. No standard reporting format, no serious international oversight. Which is convenient if you're trying not to attract attention. But the data centers are only half the story. The chip factories are where things start becoming difficult to comprehend. Modern semiconductor manufacturing requires something called ultra-pure water. Not clean water, ultra-pure water. Water filtered to a level that's honestly absurd. Tiny, microscopic contamination can destroy advanced chips worth enormous amounts of money. So factories rinse silicone wafers constantly during production, over and over. A large semiconductor fabrication plant can consume 10 to 15 million gallons of water every single day. Every day. TSMC, the company making most of the world's advanced AI chips, is one of the largest industrial water consumers in Taiwan. And Taiwan has a problem. The island depends heavily on seasonal rainfall and reservoirs. In 2021, it experienced its worst drought in more than half a century. Reservoir levels kept falling. Farmers were told to stop irrigation in some regions. Water trucks started appearing in towns. And through all of that, chip production kept going. Because it had to.
The global economy was already panicking over semiconductor shortages. Stopping production wasn't really an option. So, emergency wells were drilled. Water was redirected. Supply chains adapted. Most people barely noticed. The story disappeared into trade publications for about a week and then quietly evaporated. But that moment revealed something important. The world's most advanced technology industry depends on something extremely ancient. Reliable water. And once you notice that, you start seeing the pattern everywhere. The United States is trying to rebuild domestic semiconductor manufacturing. Intel is expanding aggressively in Arizona, which is an interesting choice, because Arizona already has a water problem. The Colorado River, which supports around 40 million people across the American West, has been shrinking for years. Lake Mead dropped so low that old shipwrecks and long submerged structures started reappearing from the waterline. The landscape literally began exposing its own memories. At the same time, billions of dollars in chip infrastructure kept flowing into the desert. More facilities, more cooling systems, more long-term industrial water demand. And to keep supporting that growth, groundwater extraction keeps increasing. Which works, until it doesn't. Some aquifers refill extremely slowly. Others effectively don't refill at all on human timescales. Some of that water fell as rain thousands of years ago. Once it's gone, it's gone. Germany is running into its own version of this problem. Europe wants semiconductor independence too, so massive facilities are being planned across the continent. Intel's megafab project in Magdeburg is part of that push.
But the surrounding region has dealt with recurring droughts and declining river levels for years. The Elbe River has repeatedly dropped low enough to disrupt shipping. Farmers already argue over water access there. And now, one of Europe's largest industrial projects may eventually sit inside that same system, competing for resources. Nobody says this publicly in dramatic terms because it sounds politically inconvenient, but it's true anyway. Even countries that are planning more carefully are still trapped by the scale of what's coming. Japan has invested heavily in water recycling systems for semiconductor manufacturing. Some facilities recover and reuse enormous percentages of their water. Technically, it's impressive. But even there, conservation is fighting against expansion. Because every country now wants more compute capacity, more fabs, more AI infrastructure, and speed usually beats caution. India may end up facing the sharpest version of this entire dilemma. The country's data center industry is growing incredibly fast. AI demand, cloud infrastructure, digital services, everything is scaling simultaneously.
Cities like Hyderabad and Chennai are becoming major technology hubs, which sounds great. Until you remember something. Chennai almost ran out of water in 2019. Not metaphorically, actually ran out. Reservoirs hit near zero levels. Businesses slowed down. Residents lined up around water trucks carrying emergency supplies across the city. And now, around that same region, new technology infrastructure is being built that will require reliable cooling water indefinitely. That doesn't automatically make the expansion wrong, but it does make the situation feel fragile. Historically, civilizations have always understood the relationship between water and power. Mesopotamia understood it. Ancient Egypt understood it. The Indus Valley understood it. Control water, and you control stability. Control irrigation, and you control food. Control rivers, and eventually you control politics. The Roman Empire spent enormous resources building aqueducts, not because they were luxurious, because they were strategic. And when invading forces cut Rome's aqueducts during sieges, the city didn't collapse immediately from military defeat. It started collapsing because infrastructure failed, because water stopped moving. That pattern never really disappeared. It just became harder to recognize. Today, the aqueduct looks like semiconductor supply chains and hyperscale data centers. But underneath all the complexity, the dependency is still the same. Taiwan is probably the clearest example. Around 90% of the world's most advanced chips come from one island. One.
And those facilities depend on stable water access in a region facing both rising geopolitical tension and worsening drought conditions. The world usually talks about Taiwan through the lens of military risk, warships, blockades, diplomacy. But honestly, you don't even need a military conflict to create disruption. Modern chip fabrication is incredibly delicate. Interrupt the water supply, contaminate it, destabilize access long enough, production stops anyway. That's the part people don't fully absorb. The vulnerability isn't hidden deep inside some classified intelligence report. It's built directly into the physics of the system. Meanwhile, the AI boom keeps accelerating everything. Microsoft alone committed tens of billions of dollars toward data center expansion. Google, Amazon, Meta, all racing to build faster, larger, denser infrastructure. And these facilities aren't temporary. Once built, they consume water continuously for years, possibly decades. Which means every decision happening right now isn't just a construction decision. It's a long-term resource commitment. And many regions competing hardest for AI investment are offering cheap land, tax incentives, fast permits,
without fully understanding what the cumulative water burden may eventually look like. Some local governments are starting to notice. In Virginia, already one of the largest data center hubs on Earth, utility planners have quietly started warning about future resource strain. Conversations that barely existed 5 years ago are suddenly appearing in municipal planning meetings. Not national headlines, planning meetings, which is usually where major problems begin. To be fair, the industry isn't ignoring this completely. Some companies are experimenting with advanced cooling technologies that reduce water use. Others are investing in recycling systems or making water-positive commitments. Some of those efforts are legitimate. But efficiency gains have a strange habit of disappearing when scale explodes fast enough.
A facility becomes 30% more efficient. Then the company builds 3 more facilities. Total consumption still rises. Human civilization has done this repeatedly. Cars became more fuel efficient. People drove more. Electronics became more energy efficient. We filled homes with more electronics. The savings rarely stay savings for very long. And maybe this resolves cleanly. Maybe desalination technology improves faster than expected. Maybe cooling systems evolve. Maybe infrastructure planning becomes smarter before shortages become serious. That future is possible. But there's another version too. One where climate stress, water scarcity, AI demand, energy pressure, and geopolitical tension all start colliding at the same time. Not dramatically, gradually, quietly. The dangerous thing about infrastructure problems is that they usually look manageable right up until they aren't. The Roman aqueducts worked brilliantly for centuries, until one day they didn't. And civilizations rarely collapse because of a single catastrophe. Usually it's pressure stacking on pressure. Systems designed for one era suddenly operating under completely different conditions. That's the feeling this creates. Because underneath all the excitement around artificial intelligence, underneath the marketing videos and trillion-dollar valuations and futuristic product launches, there's still something very old holding the entire system together. Water. Ordinary water. The kind pulled from rivers, reservoirs, aquifers. The kind civilizations have depended on since the beginning. And now we're using staggering amounts of it to build the infrastructure of the future, which may turn out to be reasonable, or may turn out to be one of the strangest resource decisions modern civilization ever made. The AI race is real. The chip war is real. But underneath both of them, there's another conflict already taking shape. Nobody calls it a water war yet, but eventually they probably will.